Welcome back to my shop. My name is Guy, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made some kitchen cabinets. Now this is a base unit, this is an upper. These are all based on using a 32mm system. Very easy way to build cabinets, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. Well, I'm going to start where I always do on cabinets. I've got full sheets of plywood here. This is 3/4 inch maple ply. It's pre-finished both sides, and I've got a cut list. I'm going to break it all down with my track saw. Now, I'm really not that concerned about how much waste there is on this. I'm more concerned about the efficiency of cutting it up. So I'm going to start with this and then break it down. Now that I have a nice clean edge here, I can use my parallel guide system along with my track to make this cut. Now this is going to be 610mm or 24 inches, and the nice thing about using this system is that I'm not breaking this sheet down into rough size and then cutting it again. This is the final dimensions, so I'm going to get to it. This first sheet cut up, I'm going to put another sheet up here, and I'm going to continue making the rip cuts that I need. With this one edge squared up, I can then take my parallel guides and start using them with a shorter track to make my cross cuts. Now here are all the pieces to make one of the cabinets. I've got all the different supports and nailers I need. This is the bottom, and these are the sides. Next thing I need to do is to make a groove along the back of the inside pieces and along the back of the bottom. And I'm going to do that at the router table. Over at the router table, I've got a special undersized 1/4 inch plywood bit set up in here. I think it's about 7/32 of an inch, and some feather boards. And I'm just going to run the pieces over this and create a groove with a setback of about 3/4 of an inch from the edge. Now I'm ready to start drilling the holes in the panels. What this is a drilling jig, and it's going to allow me to drill my hinges, my adjustable shelf pin holes. This is a hinge, and this is for my drawer slide. Now these cabinets are based off the Blum process 32mm cabinets. And according to their instructions, all my panels have to be 775mm tall, which is 30.5 inches. But it's real nice because it lays out exactly where all these holes need to go. So for example, this is one drawer, one door on this cabinet. So it's saying I need to drill holes here and here for this hinge plate, here and here for this hinge plate, and here for my drawer slide. And that's how this is set up. So I'm going to explain really quickly how this jig works. I've got these, which gives me the setback from the front, which I want 37mm as the setback from the front edge for all the holes. I'm going to put these on here, push this up against the pins on the side so it all lines up nice. Then I'm going to use my router that's equipped with this little plate, and that goes on my track. And there's a little window right here that tells me where I need to drill the holes. So for example, here I can do the hinge or the drawer slide, hinges, adjustable shelf pins, and so on. Once I get this first row of holes drilled, I need to move this over, drill one more hole in the middle of the panel for my drawer slide. Then I need to spin this all around and drill the holes in the back for my adjustable shelf pins. All right, so this side was done, only took a couple minutes. I've got my shelf pin holes, I've got my hinge plates, and my drawer slides. Now I just need to make a mirror image of this on the other side. I'm getting ready to cut the joinery for the cabinet, and I'm going to use my Lamello Zeta P2, And this is kind of like a biscuit joiner, except much better. It uses these special connectors and a special slot, and it'll allow me to do all this without using any clamps or screws. Let me zoom in a little bit and I'll show you how these work. So if you look at the slot this creates, you're going to see two little wings right here. And what happens is the bit plunges in, and then when it reaches a certain depth, it goes up and down and creates these little wings. And that enables you to take one of these special fittings that I mentioned before. It's got a groove in there, and those just get pushed into there. And there's a corresponding one with these little prongs that goes into the end of the board. So how this works is really simple. After I have these two halves inserted, you notice there's these wings here, and then there's some teeth down here. And when I push these two together, it applies 30 pounds of clamping force on this. So I should be able to glue this together and just hold it that way without any clamps, which will be really nice. Now, if you don't have one of these machines, which I know a lot of you won't, you can use biscuits and screws, dominoes and screws, pocket holes, all kinds of different things to get these put together. This is just what I'm going to use on this project. So just like a biscuit joiner, it's just a matter of placing it on the board, referencing the top, and plunging it in. I need to mark out for where the connectors go on the bottoms and on the sides also. And for that I'm going to use a story stick. I'm always going to measure off the back. And I just need to make two marks here and here. Like so, and then make corresponding marks like that on the sides. Well, after I've done all the edge banding, the panels are ready to get glued up into a cabinet. Glue will not stick to this, so I've got this little sanding jig. It's just a piece of sandpaper, and I cut a 3/4 by 3/4 notch in it and glued that in there. And I just need to remove the glue wherever these joints are going to be. You know, it goes pretty fast. Now I just need to apply some glue and spread it around and snap the bottom in, and then the other parts afterwards. Just put a square to it real quick. That's nice. It's nice and square, so I'll check the diagonals in a few minutes. But this cabinet is really strong already, and after the glue dries, it's going to be even stronger. I'm ready to start making the drawer for this cabinet. I'm going to be installing these undermount drawer slides, which are made by Bloom, and the instructions are very, very clear as to how big the drawer has to be. It's dependent on the size of the opening and the thickness of the stock. Now in this case, I've milled some stock down to 13 millimeters or a ½ inch, and using the numbers given on this sheet, I know what size these have to be. So now that I've got these parts cut for the drawer, I'm going to take over the router table. I'm going to round over the top edges. Now I need to route a groove in all the pieces for the drawer bottoms, and I've got that special undersized bit again, and the fence is set away from the bit 13 millimeters or a ½ inch, and that is being dictated by the instructions for the drawers. So I just need to run all these pieces through. Now these drawer slides require a notch to be cut in the back of the drawer so it can fit over that. And it needs to be as high as the bottom of the drawer and 1 3/8 of an inch over, or 35 millimeters. So I've got a dado stack set up on my table saw, and the distance from the fence to the outside chipper is 1 3/8, and I've got it raised up to the correct height. So I'm just going to use my miter fence, put it on here, go through once, and then come back and get the other side. With these notches cut out, I'm ready to start doing the joinery. I'm going to be using the same connectors I used to build the cabinets, which are these. These are designed for ½ inch stock, which this basically is at 13 millimeters. And I'm going to mark down, in this case, 45 millimeters from each top edge. Well, it's all glued up, and I've got what little squeeze out there is cleaned up. I should mention that I did sand these sides to 120 grit and pre-finish them with 2 coats of shellac. And I'm just going to check for square. Looks good so far. All I've got to do is let this sit, and tomorrow it'll be rock solid and ready to install. Well, the glue on the drawer boxes is dried, and these things are rock solid. So I need to start installing the hardware for the drawer slides. Now there's a locking mechanism that gets put in the front like this, and there's 2 screws that go in this way. Now remember, I notched this out in the back for these slides that go in like this. There's a little tab on the back here, and I need to drill a hole in through for that. So I've got this drilling jig. It takes a couple different drill bits, but to install these drawers, it's a must-have. So I'm going to use this and get those holes drilled. If you remember back to the beginning of this video, I drilled holes for my drawer slides with my drilling jig, and that accepts these 5 millimeter system screws. I just need to position these drawer slides here, match up those holes. I'm going to use a spring clamp to hold it in place, and I'm going to start this screw with a regular screwdriver, and then finish it up with the power driver. Now with the drawer slides in, all I have to do is push the drawer in until I hear it click, like that, and we're good. Now that drawer is installed, I can start working on the upper cabinets. Now the upper cabinets are basically very close to the same thing as the lower cabinets, with a couple exceptions. The height is the same. Obviously, they're not as wide. These are only 12 inches versus 24 inches, or I should say 305 millimeters versus 610 millimeters. There's obviously no holes that need to be drilled for the drawer slides. There's just 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom, and that'll allow me to attach hinge plates. And then these are all the holes for the adjustable shelves. Also on the uppers, there's going to be a nailer on the bottom and the top. There's only a nailer on the top of the base cabinets because you really don't need to nail anything on the bottom. Also on the top, this goes the full width instead of just one piece in the front. So with that, all that being said, I'm going to get to drilling the holes in the sides of the cabinet. All the doors and drawers for these cabinets and the uppers are going to be simple shaker style frames. So I've got some material milled up here. This is 19 millimeters thick or 3/4 inches thick by 2 1/4 wide. These are some scrap pieces. The first thing I need to do is take all these and run a groove a 1/2 inch deep right in the center of this. That's a 1/4 inch wide. I'm going to use these test pieces to set that up. With all the grooves cut in the material for the stiles and the rails for the doors and the drawers, I need to go over the miter saw and start cutting these to length. I've got some pieces cut up here. Now this is for the drawer front, this is for the lower cabinet door, and this is for the upper cabinet door. Now I need to start working on the tenons that'll be on the rails for these pieces. I've gone ahead and dry assembled the frame for the drawer front, and it's very flat. All the joints came together very, very nice, which is always a good thing. So with this being done, I can go ahead and measure for the panels that'll sit inside these frames. I've got all the panels cut for the frames, and the material I'm using is what's called multi-core. So it's plywood, poplar core with MDF skins, and it's primed on both sides. That's why I got this. It's going to make it much easier to paint later on. So what I need to do first, before I put these doors together, is I need to put a back cut on all these so it fits inside these grooves. Well, after gluing up all the doors and the drawer fronts, ran everything through the drum sander at 120 grit, then I took a random orbit sander at 120, got rid of all the scratch marks, and then went to 150 and then eventually to 180, and I'm left with what I have here. They came out really, really nice, really super square. Then I took a sanding block and just got rid of the sharp corners. Now I need to fit the doors and the drawer faces to the cabinet itself. Well, this is where the magic of the LR32 system really comes into play. If you remember at the beginning of the video, I drilled the holes for the hinge plates in the cabinet side using a 46.5 millimeter offset. I mentioned just a second ago that I want to put the holes for the hinge cups 16 millimeters between those two hinge plates. So what I have now is a block that's 62.5, so 62.5 minus 16 is 46.5. I've got it marked at hole number 2. So if I drill the hinge cups in the door on the second hole right here, that hinge cup is going to line up perfectly in the center of those two holes for the hinge plate. I know it sounds confusing, but it's really quite simple. So I'm just going to use this in conjunction with my router and a 35 millimeter hole boring bit and drill some holes in my door here. Well, I've got my door clamped to my work table. I've got my rail in place. I've got both 62.5 millimeter stops on there, and I've marked where I need to drill the cup hinges. And again, those will be right in the center of the two hinge plates. So I need a setback from the front edge of not 37 millimeters this time, but 23 millimeters. And that's going to give me the right distance from this edge to where the cup hinge starts to get the desired reveal on the front doors. And that's set by the manufacturer's specifications. So I'm going to put those on there, push this back, and then clamp it from underneath. Now I've got a 35 millimeter bit installed in my router, and this is going to be the same operation as before. I'm just going to put on the guide rail, snap it into place on my mark, drill one cup hinge, come down here and drill the other. And just that easy. I've got the holes drilled for the cup hinges. No measuring, just all done with jigs. Now with everything in place, I should be able to just snap these doors right on these hinges. Just like that. Now just like the door, there's adjustments for the drawer. I want the face of this to be perfectly flush and even with the frame of my cabinet. So right here there's adjustments, and that moves us in and out. There's an adjustment underneath which moves it side to side, and there's an adjustment in the back which adjusts the tilt. I'm not going to go through all that because it took me a little bit of time to get this one just right, but it's even all the way across the front. So I should be able to put my 1/8 inch spacer here, put the door on, line it up with these edges, and also have an even 10 millimeters across the top, which I do, so that's perfect. Now I'm not going to attach the drawer face to the drawer box right now. I will do that after I put a coat of finish on everything. Well, the last step in this whole process is putting the backs in and making the adjustable shelves. Now, adjustable shelves are simply plywood with some pre-finished edge banding on it. Very easy. Put some shelf pins in there and just drop them in. Last thing I need to do before I install these is to put finish on them, but that is a different subject. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.